Just tell me when, Owen, John.
Yep, I started it. There you go.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Vittner. I'd like to call to order the July 6, 2021 meeting of the Information Technology Strategy Investment Committee. The time is now 10:01. First order of business is a quick introduction. The biennium budget signed by Governor Lamont on June 23rd includes new bond authorizations for the Information Technology Capital Investment Program totaling $105 million. With the current unallocated balance of $87.7 million, the program has $192.7 million for potential bond commission allocation through the biennium, which would be for new projects and continued funding for active projects which have not received full allocation. To date, those total $271 million. Josh, do you have anything else you'd like to add to an introduction today?
No, I thank you, John, for the setup, and thanks everyone for your continued support and participation in this important committee. I think Secretary McCaw and Paul Mounds and others kind of leading our negotiations on the budget fought very hard and were very successful in securing a significant continued authorization for IT capital. And I think that was made possible by the momentum that this administration's built up in terms of the progress we're delivering and the results we're delivering using technology strategically to benefit the state, our taxpayers, our employees. And so, thanks to everyone involved for their efforts and to keep the momentum going. But the work of this committee remains critical because although we have significant authorizations, as John mentioned, we're cognizant that we're spending tax dollars here, right? And every dollar we invest needs to be strategic, needs to be thought through, and needs to have a clear ROI associated with it. And so that's why we appreciate everyone's service on this committee as we look to continue to evaluate the projects as they come forward. So thanks.
Thank you, Josh. The next order of business is the acceptance of the minutes from May 4th, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. It's Kim.
Second.
Thank you, Kim.
Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. The next order of business is the Department of Administrative Services Enterprise Cybersecurity Improvement Program. Jeff Brown, Chief Information Security Officer from DAS Best, has joined us. Jeff, can you please provide the committee an overview of the project and the program?
Yes, thank you very much, John, and good morning. Welcome, everybody, and I hope you all had a great long holiday weekend. I'm going to share a brief slide deck to drive a little bit of the conversation, but today we are looking to put a fairly sizable investment into the information security area, cybersecurity risk and compliance. So let me just share my screen in a moment. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Hold on a
There it
moment.
is. Oops.
That's the
We're
wrong
seeing-
desktop. Okay, hopefully that's a little better.
Definitely.
Okay, let's pop that into full screen and then let's go through it. So Again, today we're going to talk briefly about just what the overall investment is, what we're going to look to use it for, and some of the benefits that I believe will be brought to the state's cybersecurity program. Just by way of introduction, I've been with the state now a little short of a year and a half. And we're going to go over a little bit of the progress that we've made in that time, as well as the request objectives and how we're going to execute and deliver on that when we get the funding to move forward. So just to summarize, we are looking at seeking an $11 million IT capital investment into cybersecurity with a projected run rate of approximately 400,000 post 2024. So this is really like kind of a 3-year view of building the cybersecurity program. Again, we do have a number of different controls already in place, but they have really traditionally been intended for the executive branch, and not so much in terms of bringing all the agencies, consolidating resources, bringing everything into one place, and also modernizing to keep up with not only some of this consolidation activity, but as well as the digital government's efforts. As we talk, we're expanding a number of different sites, automating and digitizing a number of different things for the government, and we need cybersecurity to be able to keep up with that and protect all of our new digital footprint. The benefits that we hope to achieve: meaningful risk reduction for the state of Connecticut, as well as our expanding digital platforms. Across states, budget does continue to be one of the top barriers. This is just some statistics from NASCIO, which is the National Association of State CIOs. They keep track of a lot of these different statistics across the states, but lack of sufficient cybersecurity budget continues to be kind of a big issue across 46%. Staffing and legacy infrastructure make up a lot of the other challenges. And only 18, as of 2020, only 18 states have a cybersecurity line item at all. So some of this is really just buried within IT. And we're really looking to be able to start to quantify what we do with security, how we do it, what we spend, and the risk reduction that is being achieved. Going over some of the progress that we've made to date, number one, and I think first and foremost, is really getting up to 24/7 monitoring. That is something that has not traditionally been in place, is now in place. I can tell you we just had a fairly large ransomware attack happen globally over the long weekend. I don't think that was a coincidence that it was a holiday weekend in the US. Although it is a global attack, we should keep that in mind. But one of the challenges is that the threat environment doesn't sleep, and that we need to keep up with it, not only during business hours, but 24/7. We do now actually have a capacity to be able to monitor around the clock. So that is just a huge step forward. We've looked at a number of different things with email security, and we understand a lot of the risks there. We actually have projects queued up, and just a real world example of what happens here. We have seen emails sent that look very, very legitimate, coming from state employees that are not actually state employees. So basically, people are able to forge emails relatively easily and then send them out as state employees. Obviously, that's a huge concern for us. We do have a good idea how to deal with this, and we do have projects queued up, ready to go basically once we receive funding. On the vulnerability management side, this is really identifying, some of our known risks and issues, things that haven't been patched, things that are not updated, things that have gone end of life. We finally now have a way of actually seeing these vulnerabilities, which is something that we struggled with, I think, prior years. We now have something that is really a pretty good story to tell, because what we've done is built a central capacity for this that allows for not only for a holistic view of risk, so now we can start seeing across agencies, but it's also something that actually saves money, because as the agencies are using very much the same products, when they come due, we're able to put them onto our central instance. Now we have a better view of risk. We're saving money across the agencies, and it's a very good story to tell. On the negative side, we have 30,000 plus vulnerabilities, and we need to start putting together processes and patching and et cetera, all of the rest of the things that go with this. So part of this ask is to really build part two to identifying and managing our vulnerabilities. Just a couple other highlights I'll go over here. Just malicious domain blocking. That is a ransomware protection, among other things. That is something that comes through one of our partner federal agencies, something called the MS-ISAC. We have been able to get that deployed. We do actually see quite a bit of malicious traffic that is now being blocked thanks to that service. So I think that's been a good story to tell as well. Many of you might also be aware that we're now conducting statewide phishing campaigns. And really what I mean here is self-phishing. This is where we send emails from the security group that look like they are legitimate mails, but there's usually more than enough indication that they may not be. And then we measure how people are reacting to this. So we're now on our second campaign, planning our third across all statewide employees, and really looking to build that out a little bit more. This phishing remains the #1 security vector that these kind of attacks are coming in. And then finally, optimization. We're trying to leverage our scarce resources on the most important high-risk security issues. I think what you'll see in most agencies is that we have, a security person, sometimes a little bit more than that. Sometimes there's none. Sometimes there's just an IT person that handles security as well. Not a great use of our resources. Obviously, the security area has a number of different, really technical skills that are necessary, and really being able to pull everybody together and leverage them on a risk basis, so that we have people working on things that are really the most critical risks. And by critical, I really define that as the most likely to happen, and that if they did happen, they would have a big impact. So that's really how we run a risk-based program, really making sure that we're dealing with things that are likely to happen, and if they do happen, would have a big impact. So we don't go after every single vulnerability, because that can be very impractical to do, and you don't want to really waste resources working on the wrong thing. So this helps us really prioritize. The investment objectives, I just want to talk about this because, essentially we're asking two very different amounts with the run rates of 400K post 2024. We're really in a build phase. So I'm going to distinguish between build and operate. The build phase, which is really where we're at right now, has really, I think, 4 major objectives. And within those objectives, there's multiple projects, quite a few actually, in terms of managing some of these high-level objectives. And one is just managing our vulnerabilities, right? Which is really, identifying things that are known issues, things that can lead to system compromise, and things that need to be remediated one way or another. Next is really incident response, and incident response is getting more and more critical because as we've seen in the real world, incidents are going to happen. The way that we respond to them and the speed and agility that we respond to them will often dictate whether or not something is either a bit of an issue or a giant disaster. So you can have 2 very, very different scenarios, but speed of response has become really critical in the industry. A number of different foundational things. And number 3 here, we'll talk a little bit more about how some of this breaks down. And then finally, IT compliance, which is also very much joined at the hip with security. As we bring in new agencies under our wing in the Department of Administrative Services area, it's going to be more and more important for us to be able to meet requirements from either healthcare information, federal tax information, in some cases, credit card information, PCI. So there's a number of different things that we have to start thinking about a little bit more strategically, because right now that is a very reactive area in terms of, we get an audit or we have an issue and we take care of it, but we're not really being as proactive as we need to be. A little bit of the overviews of some of these areas. So, manage our vulnerabilities. We want to develop a process for vulnerability management altogether. I mean, as we probably have seen, many security attacks happen from known vulnerabilities, in some cases vulnerabilities that have been around for some time. It's not always that a brand new vulnerability leads to system compromise. What we're really seeing is that the majority of them really are about vulnerabilities that just haven't been addressed. And again, going back to the fact that we have some 30,000 that need to be addressed, this is obviously something that we need to get under control very, very, very quickly. Building an application security function. As we move towards digital government, we're launching more and more applications. We don't really have this capacity right now, so this is something that needs to be built up. In the past, the security group has really just run a single application. That application is now end of life, so this is really kind of a blank slate activity. We're going to be building this very much from scratch. And then finally, increase network vulnerability. One of the challenges that we've had is just some of our tools weren't really able to keep up with some of the new things that we've seen. As technology increases, our attack footprint also increases, and really being able to keep up with all of the technology that's already deployed. And then obviously, as we move into services like cloud security, being able to have that visibility so that we do have a holistic view of risk, which really gives us a view of, what kind of threats that we need to worry about and where we need to worry about them. On incident response, really, again, speed of response is going to be really critical in this area. So expanding our security monitoring capacity, getting things into our MSSP, which is really it's our security monitoring function. We want more things to be able to be monitored 24/7. Right now, we're at capacity. We're actually over capacity. And we do need some funding to address that, but we're really trying to make sure that our most critical systems are monitored round the clock. So we have a pretty good story to tell here, but we don't have enough. What we need to do is really expand what we're doing and make sure that that our most critical systems are being monitored all the time, regardless of evenings, weekends, holidays. Proactive threat hunting and incident response, and really what that means is actually being a little bit more proactive and going out and finding vulnerabilities. What we've seen is that usually when there are big attacks on networks, in many cases those attackers have been in the network for, in some cases, 6 months, in some cases even a year. We want to be able to go out and actively find some of these threats and address them. Right now, I don't think we have that capacity. We're going to need tools and some special things with monitoring as well. So that is another part of this ask. On the foundational activities, again, going back to the example of what's happened over the weekend, third-party supply chain security is really critical in the industry. And what that means is we have partners. We buy software, we buy services, we give them data. We do not have a security program in place today that really does very much with our third parties. That's something that also needs to be built very much from the ground up. But really, I think a major theme this year with Colonial Pipeline, SolarWinds, and now this, is that third parties can definitely compromise our own security, even if our own security is in very, very good shape. Unfortunately, some of your partners can end up compromising your network as well. Building out comprehensive policies and standards, and then also dealing with aging security infrastructure. So part of this ask is addressing some end-of-life applications as well as hardware. Really, the last thing we want to do is have a security hardware or software, kind of service that actually has become a security risk because it's out of service life. So part of this ask is also addressing aging security infrastructure. Then on compliance, really talking about policies and standards there as well, getting more proactive, security governance and oversight, really creating that level of, not trying to reinvent the wheel every time an audit happens, really being able to, be able to address these things very quickly and easily, and support the agencies in every way that they need to. And I think especially when we talk about federal tax information or FTI, that's something that comes with a lot of requirements, and a lot of those requirements are very much hard-coded with the IRS and non-negotiable. So we have to make sure that we're able to do that. Otherwise, I do believe that we could have some struggles optimizing some of the FTI agencies and pulling some of that stuff in centrally. And then finally, training and awareness. I think that remains important. Any single person across the state can do the wrong thing at the wrong time and end up, resulting in a compromise. So really making sure that folks do understand their security responsibilities, as well as just awareness, even just basic simple things like how to report a security incident. I've seen many companies that people aren't really clear on what to do or how to do it. So we want to make sure that we're spending time in that space as well. Just a little bit on how we will execute and deliver, because obviously I do acknowledge that this is a sizable investment into this area that has traditionally been underfunded. Really, step one obviously is obtaining the funding and support for the program. We want to make sure that we're aligning our security resources. A lot of that has to do with optimization and making sure that we have the people to execute on this, as well as the people to operate like longer term. So, I think what you'll find is in this initial investment ask, we are going to be working with some consultants and vendor partners, but this is a build phase. So I do want to remember that distinction between build and operate. We're going to be in build phase for a little while here. And what we want to make sure is that we don't end up building something that nobody can operate in phase two. So that's going to be a really important piece of this. And then prioritizing by risk and impact, we've already talked about that, but running a risk-based security program is really the modern way to do things. You can't go after every single issue in every single place, but making sure that we get the most important things that will have the highest impact is really the way that we're going to operate on this. Disciplined project management and reporting. We want to make sure that, obviously, an investment into this area, we want to make sure that the projects actually happen and that they happen on time and as close to on budget as humanly possible. So we want to have some disciplined project management around this. Some initial questions that we went through with this, we are going to be working with a number of different vendor partners, but we're also going to be, taking very central responsibility for all of the projects and funding, centrally in my group. And then finally, filling the gaps with federal grants. So we are still very much leaning on our federal partners like MSI, SAC, NASIO, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Critical Infrastructure Security Agency. All of these federal partners are working to, really what they've done is acknowledge that we have a lot of challenges across the states. And that we want to make sure that we are taking advantage of any federal grants that we can, to basically enhance our security even better than it is now. I will pause for questions here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Are there any questions I can help answer?
Maybe just while people are contemplating their questions, just a couple comments. First of all, it occurs to me this may be the first time a lot of people are meeting Jeff, and so I wanted to, properly introduce him as well. Jeff, is in this role as our Chief Information Security Officer, a role which is very common and has been for some time in large and complex businesses, but up until this administration did not exist in state government. And so, and Jeff comes with a very distinguished career in the private sector, and we're just absolutely thrilled that he was willing to take on this public service challenge and has done so much, bootstrapping our efforts so far. We know within existing kind of personnel and resources, but as you heard and can learn more about if you're interested, we're at a stage where we really need to up our game here. This is also, I would just say, an issue that is front and center with the governor right now, just for people's awareness as well. He actually is co-chairing a task force with the NGA that has a particular focus around cybersecurity. There's actually an NGA meeting on this topic on Thursday, and it's a topic he asks about regularly, which is, I think, somewhat unusual for people in his role, but probably has a lot to do with his prior business experience as well, and understanding how critical it is to have the appropriate cybersecurity infrastructure and processes in place to protect the enterprise, particularly when we're talking about the state and we're talking about the incredible diverse set of information and data and services that we own or have under our control, or that we provide to our citizens, and how operationally and politically troublesome it would be if we were to suffer significant breach or operational disruption due to a cyber attack. So very, very supportive of these investments, Jeff, and thank you for bringing them forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee?
I have one, John.
Go ahead, Kim.
One at this moment. So Jeff, when we previously met for you to go over the brief, I had suggested that a point person in IT in your group be selected as a manager just to make sure. And as Josh just mentioned, I think that is you. However, you're still listed as a proposal submitter, and I'm not going to feel comfortable until I know that I have not just a third party, but I have an internal state employee that is a project manager for this project.
Kim, this is Mark, and we heard you loud and clear on that. We're actually recruiting a person right now and in the final stages of doing so. So
Okay.
We have someone that'll be an excellent person name that we can put in there, but we're not across the finish line yet.
Okay. I just want it noted that I don't want to just rely on a third party, as I have experienced in my past that could be a train wreck.
Understood.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I will just one more piece of context. One of the things that we see in the IT space, and as it relates to the third-party audits that we have done, Jeff had mentioned, IRS and CMS and Social Security and CJS all come and audit our environments. That the effort that it takes to comply with those audits is increasing. So the amount of data that people are inspecting and the kinds of things that they're asking for has taken our cost to comply through our manual efforts, right, from 2 and 3 times as much time to spend with each one of those audits. And so the other thing that this does is it helps us to provide more repeatability and automated response to those that makes our personnel time go a lot further. So the environment is changing around us related to security. So it's not just the greater risks that we face, but it's also the greater demands to demonstrate what we're doing and how we're doing it that we're also trying to account for here. But appreciate your time on this.
Mark, to that point, you actually read my mind. That was the one comment and feedback that I was going to mention. The federal government, from the conversations that we've had, has been the opportunity exists today to align some of those audits and to synchronize some of those. And do you know if that's going to be part of the conversation through NGA, is trying to get the federal government and their separate entities to align and synchronize some of this work, so the states, not just Connecticut, are not spending so much time on audit and compliance of federal requirements, because there's a lot of other work to do as well.
Yeah, that has been something that we as a CIO community at the states have been advocating for several years, which is the harmonization of those federal regulations. We've actually done some testimony in front of Congress. I was part of the Homeland Security Committee testimony, but other NASCIO members have as well, around the desire to have the federal agencies align some of their security requirements, so it makes that easier. I wish I could give you something more definitive. I do believe it'll be part of the discussion set about being able to advocate more holistically for that from the National Governors Association. And it is something that we should spend some time with our delegates into DC, into the federal government, around the importance of this issue. We're not the only one that's advocating for that, and it helps. The better security alignment helps everyone, be more secure, because you're using your resources more effectively. It doesn't make sense to have one agency, require you to change your password every 45 days and another one every 60 days, right? It's a small example, but those differences make the technology world life and compliance more difficult. So more to come, John. The other thing I know that we had talked about in prep for this was just, there is the possibility, and it is being discussed, to align some federal funding for cybersecurity. Right, that's also something that's been advocated for, and we wholeheartedly support that. It's not in the short term, right? And so we know we have to make some of these critical improvements. And if we were to get some sustainable funding for cybersecurity in Connecticut, that we would, we definitely have ways that we can put that to good use and continue to lower our cybersecurity score at risk. It's not there today, but we're hopeful that that's not too far in the distant future.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions from committee members?
I just have one other comment out, John.
Go ahead, Kim.
I'm definitely in support of this. I just want you to all know that it seems like it's definitely a critical area that we need to focus on. And I think that definitely this is a good use of our funds. So I do want you to know that I do support this.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.
Kim took the words right out of my mouth. Definitely necessary. One piece that was sort of the last piece of the presentation had to do with training. I will tell you that even the best infrastructure in place without training is a train wreck. So we want to make sure that we spend a lot of time for the end users to really understand the impact of all of this. Curious about, I'm assuming Security Mentor and all that is associated with this. What's the relationship there? Those have been helpful. I'm wondering if we can come up with other ways to make sure that people on the other side of this are trained and know how to avoid these pitfalls.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I do think that's a critical piece of this. And again, I've seen even security companies that have been compromised by a single employee doing the wrong thing. So I think it is really important. Yes, we do own Security Mentor. That is one of the tools that we're using today. I actually think there's a number of different shortcomings, and some of the budget actually does account for this because, I'll give you an example. First of all, the phishing tool is relatively primitive, so it's not really helping to move things forward as fast as we would like. But the other thing is really there are requirements across like federal tax information, PCI, et cetera. Security Mentor is a good tool that I think people enjoy taking the training because it's not really a big burden on them. It's relatively fun and lighthearted, so they love doing it. But the reality is it doesn't actually hit a lot of the compliance requirements. So we want to modernize that tool as well, and make sure that we are putting enough attention and care and feeding into awareness. Security is a really interesting field because it's one of the few things that really does need to communicate with almost everybody across the board. So that is going to be very much a part of what we are thinking here. And some of that also requires special training for people like system administrators or people with like advanced levels of privilege. Those are the people that get attacked. So what we really want to do is make sure that we're also focusing on high risk roles and roles that may have a bigger impact than just a regular general user. So all of the above is in the cards there. I think when we talk about some of these compliance requirements, one of the things that we want to do is really start mapping that out and rolling it up. When I worked at some fairly big financial firms, like Citigroup is a good example, 300,000 people across 120 countries, probably one of the most regulated firms on earth. And what you don't want to do is end up having the tail wagging the dog because you have so many auditors and regulators coming through that, you're just continuously reacting to that. So what we do want to do is really just kind of put together a program that meets a lot of these compliance requirements in a way that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time somebody asks a question like that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Hearing none. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jody. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the vote passes, and Jeff, it looks like you got a lot of work ahead of you.
There's lot to do, but we're excited to get it underway.
Thank you for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, everybody.
Take care.
You bet.
Thanks, Joe.
The next order of business is the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System, their Nutrition in School Meals Project. I think we have Chad Rasma, Associate Education Consultant, and James Mindek. So I'm not sure which of you is going to be presenting today, but can you please walk us through and give us an overview of the project?
You want me to start, Jim, or would you like to?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I've been with the Connecticut Technical High School system for about 18 years now, various parts through the food service industry aspect. One of the things that we're operating on right now is a very archaic point of sale system that we've been probably in place for about 15 years. There's a lot of manual labor that is achieved with this old system, and we're trying to update it to kind of streamline the processes and allow communication between multiple systems and bringing it up to date. And part of that, it allows us to streamline inventories, ordering systems, par levels, allowing us to keep a better track of what's going in and out of our 17 high school locations for the food service program. The technology also integrates into other state systems such as the Collier system, which is the part of the child nutrition program. The systems that we're looking at will automatically produce the meal claiming directly into that system. We have the ability to create APIs into core CT in order to kind of, again, reduce the amount of back of house data entry stuff that we are currently doing that takes a lot of the time. With the nutrition systems that we have, there's a lot of data entry. With COVID being on us now, it's taking a lot of our time to now produce food for the student body, prepackaged and all that. All these other systems that can be streamlined and automated are now, we've been doing manually, which is really taking away from the nutritional aspect that we're trying to feed the students based off of the USDA federal government guidelines as well as state guidelines. In order to do that, we're looking at implementing, and again, modules that consist with the point of sale where parent have access to their student accounts, the online payments of these student accounts. They can load money on there, so we're now reducing the amount of physical cash on hand going through the lines. It also allows for nutritional data to be present based off of what we're ordering or the menus that we have in place for students with any types of disability or medical needs that require special diets that we are kind of having the nurse consultant go through, or the school nurse in conjunction with the staff at the school. So that'll all be automated and available online for the parents, for the students as well. It integrates again with our vendors that we have through the Connecticut, what do you call it, the contracts through DAS. So we can then integrate whatever we're ordering based off our inventory levels, so that we're no longer going in and taking weekly inventories. Yes, our staff will still be auditing them and making sure that the inventories are correct in our systems, but the systems help us say, well, you know, we have a planned menu. We now have the availability through this new system where, based off of what we're ordering, it's going to look on what we already have in inventory and make those adjustments automatically. So when we order and it comes in, we check it off, it automatically comes into our inventory, then we verify that on our end. Again, which is a manual process that we are currently doing. The other thing is all the nutritional aspects are automatically loaded into the system. So they, again, communicate with the point of sale system. They're going to communicate with the school nurse. It's going to communicate online with the parents. Other things that it also does is for HACCP procedures, which is a hazardous analysis of critical control points. We now have the availability of the system taking production records, creating temperature controls right into the production records in order to maintain compliance with proper food handling procedures. right down to alarming of our walk-in coolers, taking automated temperatures on a regular basis to make sure that we are compliant with the HACCP procedures. If anything goes wrong, we have the ability to make changes to the system, repairs if need be. Corrective action, if a freezer goes down or gets into the temperature danger zone, we're going to know automatically. The system has the ability to notify the food service director, the building maintenance supervisor, the head cooks. Where some happen, some don't. So that communication piece has been a challenge, so to speak. We've lost a lot of product due to those temping systems going down and nobody being notified. So we'll be updating a lot of that stuff with this proposal. What else are we doing? I guess just again with the streamline of online ability to access. We're going into the school sites, doing audits, pulling up their production records, or they're scanning them to us to have us manually. We'll have at a click of a button access to everything at all 17 sites across the state of Connecticut. So it's no longer jump in the car for 2 hours to drive down to Stamford to do an audit of their inventory.
Chad, you want me to jump in just for a second on maybe step it up a level, a little higher level? I'm Jim Mindick. I'm the Director of Technology for CTEX. I've been with the state for 36 years. And again, just to kind of put it in perspective, this project, at my time at UConn, one thing I really focused on was streamlining, creating efficiencies, and digitizing a lot of paper-based processes. So did that at the State Department of Ed, now with CTEX. When I joined CTEX 4 years ago, we were having all kind of auditing issues. We actually failed a couple of audits because there were so many paper-based processes in our school nutrition program. School nutrition is really not part of IT, but I jumped in to try to help solve some of those issues they were having. So that's how this kind of got started. I did participate in the Capital Investment Fund while at SDE for the Office of Early Childhood. Oversaw that project, which was successful, and also did the Performance Matters project as well. So when we started looking at this, folks at CTEX weren't even aware of the Capital Investment Project. We put an application together, and since then we started going through and really, before we even got any funding or resources, started streamlining the process already. So from a high level, we've digitized a lot of the processes. One of the major components that we did is something called CEP, which is the Community Eligibility Program. All of our kids, before the pandemic even, all of our kids now eat for free. The reason we're able to do that is because of the free reduced lunch rate in our schools, but we actually get reimbursed by the feds more than the meals actually cost us. So we turned a process that was costing us $1 million a year of operational funding. We now are making money on that already to start. So we're actually getting paid more than the meals cost by doing that. And all of our kids eat breakfast and lunch for free. So part of what we're looking for in these resources is to continue this process. And so really looking to automate our software. As Chad mentioned, our software is over a decade old. The hardware we have in the schools, we have old touchpads that don't necessarily even work correctly. So this would be basically, and again, from a very high level, upgrading the hardware and software to run our entire school nutrition program to the point where we'll actually make over almost $1 million. It's outlined in the application. I believe it's around $800,000 a year that we're actually going to be making off of this program. Again, one of the major audit findings was that our reporting was really people scrambling around trying to get reports together. The new software we're looking at will automate all of this. And again, so we'll have basically push button reporting to satisfy a lot of the auditors. A big part of this process is supplying the state and the federal government with data from our system. That's a big part of the reimbursement process. Is to make sure that we have all of our processes in alignment and all the, the record counts, the meal counts, all the things that Chad was talking about. That really is the detail behind how all of this works. So I've learned a lot over the last 3 years about school nutrition. And really Chad is the person that's been making it all work. And really we're looking to get support for resources to help streamline the systems, upgrade the hardware and software, And again, really just make better use of the staffing that we have. Right now, we have several staff doing manual processes that we are little by little, I'll say, digitizing or automating. And again, support for this project will really just help us get that accomplished quicker, over the next 3 years instead of probably over the next 10 years. Either way, we're going to do this, but it's a matter of if we don't get resources, it'll be bit by bit by bit over the next 5 to 10 years instead of trying to get it all accomplished over the next 3 years.
Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Is there anyone on the committee that would like to ask some questions?
Yes, I would. It's Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Jim, could this program also be used in early childhood as well? Beth, I know you're on the call, so I'm just wondering, as you say that this is going to help education, is it all education?
So this is, and that actually might be a question more for Chad, but I do think, I mean, the beauty of this is by automating these processes. I mean, we have talked to folks for the prison system. We've talked to folks, Chad and I were both on committees with other agency areas that do provide, lunch, meals for folks. So off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how it would be used for Office of Early Childhood, but certainly we would be open to sharing our experiences and the software itself, with other agencies, including the prison folks and Office of Early Childhood.
Yeah, we would be happy to listen. I think the way our food program runs is a little different. It runs out of PSS, and so it doesn't really come through our office, but I think we could certainly look for ways to leverage it.
Along those lines, we do, run the unified school districts, that may have some other kinds of capabilities that might be an interesting dynamic as well. Worth thinking about.
Oh, absolutely.
So some of the conversations that we had was like the juvenile system where they have to house student or juveniles that they feed through the same thing with the federal reimbursements. This program does allow that. What made it unique and accessible for us is the fact that we're spread out across the entire state of Connecticut, where it's no longer a 20-minute ride into the car to go to the school sites, where Department of Corrections with those facilities, or DCF has those facilities where they could implement something in the same measure by using the software. And our software that we're looking at is expandable not just to CTEX, but would be able to go out to other state agencies that would be looking at utilizing it.
So John and Mark, and possibly even Chris, tell me about, I know that CTEC falls under the state at this very moment, but there is a possibility that they're going to become a quasi in the future?
No, there'll be a separate agency, Kim, I believe, in
Correct. Yeah.
fiscal year 23. So just about a year from now.
But they will still be a state agency, correct?
Yeah, there'll be a budgeted state agency.
Okay. I just wanted to get clarity on that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
There's, John, a question. There's some reference in the materials to financial savings. Maybe you could talk about those a little bit more, and for our budget team here as well. Just want to make sure that those financial savings are appropriately captured in our budgets and plans going forward.
Jim, is that
Sure.
you?
You would like me to elaborate on the actual savings? So kind of touched on this earlier, but right now, again, a lot of the processes that we have now, and again, I'll talk about inventory as a huge piece of this. So providing food for 17 schools, the inventory, a huge piece of that right now is done paper-based process. So we have software that tracks it, but then we end up printing out reports, So Chad, I think, touched on one, the food waste that happens, and then just the process, the paper-based process of ordering food and keeping track of inventories. The new software we're looking at, again, so it's all real time. So orders, inventory totals hit certain amounts and it's automatically reordered. So we have a much better handle on really processing the food. But the biggest savings, and again, we actually checked the numbers multiple times. It almost sounded, I'll say, too good to be true. But it really comes back to the federal reimbursements for the meals. And Chad, please jump in if I say something incorrectly. But after going over this several times, so we went from two to 3 years ago. None of our schools had this CEP, community eligibility, where everyone eats free. And again, when we hit our percentage for free and reduced lunch rate is roughly 80% in our 17 schools, across all 17 schools. We started, because part of this, again, we didn't know exactly how the process worked. We started with 5 schools. That worked tremendously, was a huge financial savings for us because the more kids ate. So not only did we get reimbursed more than the meals were worth, and that's on purpose by the federal government, now many more kids were eating breakfast and lunch because everyone ate free. Well, now we're getting, so we almost, and Chad, I forget the exact numbers, but we almost doubled our meal counts and we're reimbursed more for those meals by the federal government. So that was a huge savings right there. So along with, and again, we calculated in some staff savings as far as the time and what they'll be doing, the reporting time. But the biggest savings really is from the federal reimbursements for food. And that came up to be over $500,000 right there. So we would not be tapping into any operational funding. So there, again, when I joined CTEX 4 years ago, the CFO for CTEX said we were spending almost just about $1 million of operational funding. We've already cut back on that. What we've actually had to purchase, use out of our own funding, and we're actually getting more. After this process is done, we'll actually have a surplus in the program. It'll actually be a money-making program, almost $700,000. And I think, like I said, we actually have that all itemized and laid out on where those numbers are coming from. And again, we knew that was a big jump to say that, it's almost a $2 million swing. We went over it multiple times, and they're actually real savings. Like I said, almost $1 million in operational funding, and then we're actually going to be getting a surplus of about $700,000 to $800,000.
Great, that's great. And it sounds like from reducing the manual work too, is there FTE savings as well?
Absolutely. And right now, I mean, we are short-staffed right now. And then, of course, we have retirements coming too. That is a major issue for us. So we're ramping up some of the staffing. Again, just the staffing across 17 schools. You have to have a head cook. You have to have an assistant head cook. There's certain roles, and Chad could certainly speak to it better than I could. But you can't just have, like, I couldn't go volunteer and cook lunch for them. You have to be certified. And so basically we had certified staff or head cooks, doing manual labor that they should not have been doing. So absolutely. So now we have a maintainer role, which can be handling the food and doing some of the roles, especially if it's electronic, they can be, or the reporting. So there's lower level roles that can be helping out a lot more, and the head cooks can actually cook, do the cooking. So there are, several areas where we're having staff savings. Do we have to have fewer staff? Chad, I'd probably leave that up to you. That's probably a question for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we've severely understaffed, and we've been that way for several years. Again, just with the hiring and coming up with the retirements, it's going to have a huge impact. Most food service programs have anywhere from 5 staff members in their kitchens all the way up to 12 to 13 on a rotational basis. CTEX has never had more than 4 in any one of our schools, some of them operating with 1 head cook, and that's it, which makes it very challenging when they're trying to meet all the federal regulations and the state guidelines in the paperwork that could be automated that is not. And for non-compliance, where we got hit a couple of years ago with our ARA audit from the state of Connecticut Child Nutrition Department, when when we don't have enough staff and they're focusing all their time on the paperwork for compliance and taking away the feeding aspect for the students becomes, I don't want to say a challenge, it's just, it's not right. You know, we need to really focus on feeding our students. So the software will help do that, but again, the staffing, we will continue to make sure that our staffing level is at least 3 in all of our sites.
I think just to add to that too, and Chad, please correct me again if I'm wrong on this, but the staffing positions, the cook positions, can be funded through the federal dollars, and a lot of those are. So that's when we talk about the, you know, where is that $1 million going? A lot of it is towards staffing, and so you know, obviously the food costs and the stuff that was not getting reimbursed before, but right now we have positions that are supplemented with operational funding that, again, through the surplus, we would absolutely pay with federal funds. So the federal funds that we get, again, you can't just use it for anything. They couldn't fund my position with you know, the federal reimbursement dollars, but they can fund the cooks and the maintainers and the assistant cooks. So that would basically come off of our books and be funded through the federal reimbursement.
Right, so they'd be self-sustaining.
Right, right.
Okay, so I defer to our teammates at OPM to make sure we're capturing all the savings there appropriately. Just last question for me is, are the cooks and the food service workers, are they anticipated to be end users of this new system, or is it all going to be then able to be run and administered centrally?
I think it's going to hit all, you know, we're all going to be end users at this point. The biggest end user is probably going to be the student. The staff have already used a point of sale system. We're kind of streamlining and, you know, integrating other things into it. So yes, head cooks would have it. Some of the child nutrition staff at the school levels will have it, but also central office for the touch point, you know, real-time reporting is all going to be handled. So it has multiple users. Right down to the parents that are accessing the online account information.
But Commissioner Duvall, you brought up one great point that I forgot to mention. So we you know, again, historically, we've had multiple servers at multiple schools running the same software. We're actually looking to move this to a SaaS model. So, you know, so basically running it out of the cloud. So the administration of the software would be handled centrally. So we have central IT folks that would be managing the system. The users would be the cooks and the students, and again, having a swipe, we have a swipe system at every school. So they would basically be the customers of the system, but we would administer the system centrally and do all the reporting, as Chad said. So that's a huge savings right there, or a huge efficiency that we're going to create.
Okay, so then hopefully real last question. Does your budget contemplate, do you include funding in this request for change management and end user training?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a quite extensive training plan. So yes, we do. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments from the committee?
Yeah, who will be the project manager for this particular project? It says to be determined. Is that because you're going to do an RFP, right?
Chad, I don't know if you want to answer that. So right now we have a gentleman actually was hoping to be on the call this morning. I think he got stuck in traffic on the way back from Maine, but we have an IT project manager that again, so right now we hadn't determined that yet. So we put TBD. We do have a very good IT project manager, Dave Donovan, who is contracted through CREC right now. But that's something we wanted your input as well. If you have a preference of, we certainly have trained project managers. Obviously, that person would work closely with Chad and myself. So whether we get a new one or utilize Dave Donovan, we could go either direction.
And the other side to that is, you know, we looked at rolling out this from a project management standpoint. Obviously, there will be state employees. We have Ms. Lopa, who is on the call right now, as part of our school nutrition team from the IT aspect. She handles our current system, will be kind of the lead point and making sure operational practices and trainings and stuff go beyond the 3-year level, but also be an integral part of the development and implementation of the project.
Okay.
Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. Can I get a motion to approve?
So Mark, so moves.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Thank you, Beth. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The vote passes and it is approved.
I think for the record, John, I think Josh left, just so you're aware, at the,
Oh,
and
thank
did not.
you.
Yep, and he did not vote on that part. He was gone at 11, just so you know that for a member's perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, Jim, you can note that.
Hmm.
No, Jim
Oh, the other-
Hatfield. All right. Well, I think this completes our business for today. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation and wish you a happy summer if I don't see you soon. With that, we will adjourn.
Thank you very much for your time. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
Thank
much.
you.